Hello, so today's video is about a perfumer who likes to stay out of the limelight and under the radar. She's someone who has created some of the most popular fragrances of our time. She's someone who's worked with brands as diverse as Lalique and Amouage, and she's also somebody famous for creating a really affordable men's fragrance that's still regarded as groundbreaking today. It's Nathalie Lorson. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire and I've been creating this series of perfumer profiles, looking at their lives in detail, looking at their most famous creations and looking really at what makes their fragrances uniquely them. So if you haven't already checked out this series, I have profiles on Quentin Biche, Dominique Ropion, Olivier Cresp, Jerome Epinette, Louise Turner and Francis Kurjan. So if you are interested, please do go check out that playlist. I will leave it linked down below along with the individual videos in this series. Also, if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire. I talk all about fragrance on this channel. I talk about fragrance science, fragrance history, and I also just do these perfumer profiles. So if you are interested and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing. And if you like this video, then please do press the like button. So back to Nathalie Lorson. So Lorson was born in Grasse around 1960 in the south of France in the home of French Perfumery. Nathalie's dad was a chemist and he worked for a company called Rouer, who would later merge with Givaudan in 1992. But at the time they were independently making fragrances and also formulating fragrance ingredients. Nathalie says that she would accompany her father to work sometimes, and this is really what got her interested in perfumery. In the early 1980s, Nathalie was lucky enough to get a place to study at Rouer-Bertrand Dupont's Perfumery School, which later turned into Givaudan's Perfumery School. She completed her studies in 1982 and she continued to work for Rouer after that, moving only in 1987 to International Flavours and Fragrances, IFF. So fast forwarding to her first ever fragrance, Nathalie is recorded in interviews as saying that her first ever fragrance creation was Romeo Jiggly by Romeo. But when I look in databases, that one is credited to Sophie Labbe. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Perhaps they work together on that fragrance. Often when you're a junior perfumer, you are not credited with your creations. And sometimes databases are inaccurate. So that may be why she's not credited for that one. But that's the one that she says was her first creation. If instead you go by the information in databases, Nathalie's first creations appear around 1994 with fragrances such as Chloe's Innocence. It's clear that Nathalie's creations in the early 90s are either poorly documented or very sparse. If instead we think about the fragrances that we can still buy today, Lawson's first fragrance that we might all actually know is one that was created in 1997, and that's Chopard's Wish. Wish clearly took some inspiration from Mugler's Angel, released in 1992. It again has that blue liquid. It's in a symbolic diamond-shaped bottle instead of angel star. And it also has a similar composition. It has the honeyed caramel vanilla sweetness alongside that patchouli. But it's somewhat lighter, easier to wear. It has coconut and it has florals. That same year, Lorson created a fragrance for Burberry called Weekend. So Weekend was based around the idea of a weekend in the British countryside, somewhere expensive and exclusive. So this is a really distinctive citrusy white floral fragrance with a slightly indolic feeling in the opening. It also has a slight dirtiness to the musk in this fragrance, but also a bit of a fruitiness. So there's nectarine listed, and in the opening it smells more like peach, but in the dry down, the indolic facet and the dirtiness of the musk calms down, and you're left with really quite a sparkling nectarine kind of fragrance. It's a distinctive fragrance, but it did feel very 90s when I tried a vintage version of this fragrance. I think it's very of its time, but clearly it was a very popular fragrance and did well for Burberry. I describe this one as a vintage floral woody musk, but I know that this one was later reformulated. They changed the bottle shape, so I'm not sure how the modern version smells if it's still on the market. But yeah, Burberry Weekend was one of her creations. In 2000, Nathalie moved companies from IFF to Firmenich, and that's where she still works today. And this coincides with a great increase in the amount of fragrances she was producing each year. It's noticeable that from 2000, her career really takes off. Just in 2000 alone, she formulated fragrances for Shiseido, Dior, Givenchy, Jill Sander, Chopard, and one I used to own, Paul Smith's Woman, which is a herbal woody rose. In 2003, Lorson created a fragrance for Dolce Gabbana called Sicily. This one stands out even today because it has an illusion of banana. It uses other ingredients to produce a banana-like smell. Given the current banana trend in perfumery, this really looks very much ahead of its time and very different to the modern take on banana. But ironically, the interest for Sicily must still be there because Sicily was re-released in 2025. 2006 was a huge year for Lorson. She created one of her most popular, most iconic fragrances with Lalique. Lalique is a company that is actually a glass company, and they went into perfumery, and Lorson says of Lalique that they actually are very free with their budgets. If you look at the price of Lalique fragrances, you can often pick up one for around £20. They're not an expensive fragrance brand. But Lorson says that she was really given a very free rein with the amount of money that she had in her budget. She could afford to use the best ingredients for those fragrances that she formulated at Lalique. And that's what she appreciated while working there. She also says that she was given plenty of time, and she contrasts this with working for companies like L'Oreal, for example. She says at L'Oreal you're expected to make modifications and to send them very frequently to be looked over. And she contrasts that with working for Lalique, where the pace was much slower. So her most famous creation for Lalique, which came out in 2006, is a male-marketed fragrance called Encre Noire. Encre Noire was an interesting take on vetiver. Nathalie describes it as the purest of vetivers, and she also says that it's one of her favourite materials to work with, and she says that it's a modern woody perfume. 2006 was really the year of vetiver. If you think about other releases at the time, such as Terre d'Hermès, another very popular vetiver fragrance, vetiver was clearly the ingredient du jour. So Lalique's Encre Noire was riding that same wave and clearly is still very successful today. To accompany Encre Noire, in 2006, Lorson also produced a female-marketed fragrance for Lalique. This one was called Pearl de Lalique, and it's one that I actually own. And that's a carbonated, woody, slightly peppery rose. In 2007, though, she had an even bigger hit. She created the fragrance Amethyst for Lalique. So Amethyst is really the quintessential berry fragrance. It's so affordable, and it was later compared with another of Lorson's creations, Meliora. Meliora was one that she made for Parfums de Marly, more on that later. But people have made comparison videos of those two fragrances, including me. I've made a comparison video, and there are some similarities between those two fragrances. And I can see if you like Meliora, you may also very well enjoy Amethyst. Parfums de Marly's Meliora was released in 2013. I think it's one of their most likeable and easygoing releases. I think Amethyst is stunning in the opening. I think the dark berry fruitiness of it is very striking and something you don't often smell, something quite so realistic in so many fragrances on the market today. It truly is one of the best dark berry perfumes I've smelt, especially at that price point. Lorson also went on to create Lalique's L'Amour, Satine, and also plenty of flankers of Encre Noire and also of Amethyst. 2007 also marked Lorson's entry into the world of celebrity perfumery. Really, at the time, celebrity perfumery was a very buoyant market, and Lorson's first foray into that world was the creation of the first fragrance for Kate Moss, who was launching a new line at the time. So this one is Kate by Kate Moss, and I love this fragrance. It's a powdery, fruity, floral, almost sweet-like fragrance. It's a fun one, but it's also a little bit retro feeling, and I think it totally captures the sort of style that Lorson was using at the time for brands like Lalique. Lorson would also go on to make fragrances for brands such as David Beckham and also for Dita Von Teese. In 2008, Lorson began her relationship with Le Labo, so she created Poivre 23, but also 2 years later she would go on to create Another 13, which really at the time in 2010 was bang on trend. Fragrance brands such as Juliette Hardogan was releasing fragrances such as Not a Perfume. That kind of musky, very ethereal feeling, second skin kind of fragrance was very in. And Another 13 really channels that trend. It's one of those fragrances that not everybody can smell, but if you can smell it, it's a citrusy, woody, ambery, musky fragrance. She also later created Queer 28, and she said that actually working for Le Labo was very freeing because at the time they were an independent company and they didn't care about budgets. Clearly, she says as well that they are now owned by Estee Lauder, and she says that she imagines Le Labo's fragrance development is perhaps quite different. 2009 saw a slow burn hit for Lorson. So she created a fragrance for Dolce Gabbana called L'Imperatrice. This was meant to be part of a range of fragrances. All of the rest of the range have been discontinued, but they were originally based around tarot cards. L'Imperatrice was number 3, and the range was marketed by lots of different supermodels. Number 3 was marketed by Naomi Campbell. The fragrance is a summer staple for a lot of people. It's a pink and green, watery, fruity fragrance. It has rhubarb, kiwi and watermelon, alongside a very distinctive feeling musk. It's incredibly juicy to begin with, and it has a lot of people at hello. And it's also incredibly affordable. When asked about the construction of L'Imperatrice, Lorson describes it as technically unusual, and she says that it was a surprisingly big hit in Russia. L'Imperatrice must have been a bestseller over the years for Dolce Gabbana. L'Imperatrice has also spawned 2 flankers. In 2011, Lorson went on to work with Trussardi, and she created a modern formulation of their original Donna fragrance, which had originally been released in 1982. The modern Donna was meant to be a reflection of the founder's granddaughter, Gaia Trussardi, and is meant to embody effortless elegance. So Trussardi Donna is a creamy yellow citrus and floral vanilla fragrance, and it's been quite a slow burn hit over the years. Continuing with affordable fragrances, Lorson also went on to launch some fragrances with Boucheron. So, for example, a fragrance she created with Olivia Cresp in 2011, Place Vendôme. The same year, Lorson went on to help launch the brand Olfactive Studio. She created one of their 3 original fragrances. She created Auto Portrait. So this is a woody, resinous, warm, spiced kind of fragrance. It always makes me think of a cosy fireside in a log cabin. In 2014, Lorson was part of the team that launched a brand new fragrance for YSL, and that was Black Opium. It was a huge worldwide hit, and Lorson actually won a fragrance award for her part in this launch. Black Opium is clearly a flanker of the original opium, but it really only takes inspiration from opium in the fact that it's related to an addiction. So Black Opium is meant to be based around the idea of a coffee addiction. It's a super sweet fragrance that focuses around the contrast of black and white. So for black, there's the coffee, the vanilla bean, and also the cedar and the patchouli. And for white, there's orange blossom, jasmine, pear, and pink pepper. We can very much see Lawson's style reflected in the pink pepper, the pear, and also the white florals. Lorson has been quoted as saying that she doesn't have favourite notes in fragrances because she creates fragrances for other people. But I really feel like Lorson is associated for me very strongly with white florals, as well perhaps as powdery, creamy and very sweet creations. I think Lorson may have been actually the one to sign off most, if not all, of the Black Opium flankers to date, and that's a lot of fragrances. When I spoke about Louise Turner was very clear that she spent a lot of her time doing Good Girl launches and making flankers for Good Girl. And I can imagine that a similar amount of time is spent by Lorson creating new fragrances for the YSL Black Opium line. It's clear that Black Opium was a worldwide hit, but Nathalie actually says that Black Opium had an American vision to it. And actually Olivia Cresp was brought in to the team to give the fragrance a bit of an American edge. Lorson says that of all her fragrances, she's very proud of Black Opium because it's been her biggest commercial success. And yeah, this is one that you just couldn't go anywhere without smelling at one point. And I think it suffers from, perhaps being over popular to a certain degree. Things become uncool, don't they, if they're so popular. But I think Black Opium is really a standout designer fragrance, and it's still creating popular flankers today. So that's Black Opium. That same year, Nathalie also created a fragrance for Versace, and this one was Versace Eros pour Femme. So this fragrance, I always think of it as a little bit of a citrus gummy bear kind of fragrance. It's a yellow citrus along with white florals, but very sweet. And I think this one really did have its moment on YouTube. It's been very popular. So in 2015, Lorson began formulating fragrances with Amouage, and she kicked off with Opus 9. She also went on to formulate fragrances such as Myth's Woman, Blossom Love, and also some for the Secret Garden range, so things like Lilac Love and also Love Tuberose. So I actually own Lilac Love, and Lorson says of this one that she used heliotrope as part of the lilac accord along with dark chocolate to create a unique floral gourmand fragrance. And yes, to me, it always makes me think of a very powdery feeling, almost white chocolate fragrance. It's just a unique smell to me. So that's Lilac Love. With Love Tuberose, Nathalie says that she wants to create a modern floral bouquet. So she used things like jasmine and gardenia along with the tuberose to make a very modern and addictive fragrance. She used Hedione to make the jasmine very lively, and she wanted to create an almost kind of whipped cream feel to the fragrance. And she used a pretty new ingredient at the time called Chantilly Accord. She melded the fragrance together by using jasmine lactone to link the florals with the kind of creamier aspects of the fragrance, and then added a spiced vanilla alongside Helvetalide, which is a really light and airy musk. Actually, when Nathalie is asked which fragrance she wears, she says that she quite often will wear just Helvetalide. And this isn't the first time that I've heard a perfumer say that that's what they wear. I think this is just a very likeable, light, airy musk, and it's perhaps something that you can wear even if when you're smelling other things, because it's just so light and diffusive. Helvetalide has a real brightness to it. It can remind some people of pear, and the dry down can smell a little bit like ambrette. So something soft and skin-like. Nathalie actually says that she's had people follow her down the street when she's been wearing Helvetalide. She says it's something that lingers on clothes a long time, and even when she hasn't sprayed it that day, people can still seem to smell it. Another combination that she says that she really enjoys wearing is a self-made fragrance consisting of orange blossom and also of musk. However, Lorson does not like to focus on what she wants and what she likes. She says that she doesn't create fragrances for herself. She creates them for other people. She says her aim in life is to touch people through fragrance. She says she's not the focus of the work, and she thinks instead of creating for somebody else. And she likes to think of herself as invisible. She says she's not a movie star or a painter who stands next to their painting and poses. She says she's more like an author that disappears behind her own words. Lorson has been incredibly successful in fragrances marketed to both genders. And really, at this time period, she was making fragrances such as This Is Him with Zadig and Voltaire, and also Givenchy's Gentleman, which she formulated alongside Olivier Cresp. In 2019, Lorson went on to work with Maison Margiela, and she created the fragrance Coffee Break, which is not always credited for, depending upon the database that you may look at. But it is definitely one of hers. So Lorson created Coffee Break not to be a sickly gourmand fragrance, but to have a slightly milky facet to it and to really have quite a lot of freshness from some lavender. I remember when I tried it, it wasn't at all what I expected from a fragrance called Coffee Break, but I think it's unique and I think it's cosy and I think it works. So over the last few years, a bit of a passion project for Nathalie Lorson has been working with Maison Violet. So Maison Violet are a really old French perfume house dating from the 1800s. And they originally manufactured cosmetics. And I really feel like a lot of their fragrances reflect that history because a lot of them are very powdery feeling. So she formulated, amongst many others, Un Air d'Apogée, Pourpre d'automne, and also Nuit Bleue. Continuing with more affordable fragrances, Lorson had a big hit for the brand Zara. She formulated a sweet pastry in Paris. This was a particularly big hit back in 2020, and I think it shows as a bit of a forerunner for fragrances such as Devotion, Bake and Victoria that would come after it. So just moving on from that, the best Zara fragrance that I've tried is actually one by Nathalie Lorson. The one that I would go back and purchase a bottle of, if I could, would be MSK004/NTL. I know it's a very easy to say, very memorable name, but the name actually reflects the fact that Nathalie Lorson was the Perfumes creator. And this fragrance is based around powdery sugared almonds. So it's powdery sugared almonds alongside musk and iris. It's delicious, but also still a perfume. And I think that one really stands out as a beautiful creation from Nathalie Lorson for Zara. It actually gets compared to Lancome's Iris Dragée, which is a fragrance that Nathalie Lorson also formulated. In 2021, Nathalie was at the forefront of trying to modernise Mugler. So L'Oreal had bought Mugler in 2020 and they were trying to relaunch the brand with their own flankers of the original fragrances. And the first one that they launched for the Alien line was Alien Goddess. And actually Alien Goddess was a huge hit. Alien Goddess really took Alien in a much friendlier direction, and it really captured that coconut trend that was everywhere in 2021. The fragrance's intense solar feel and its beachy vibe also just really fitted with a world coming out of a pandemic. It captured an idea of holidays, of sunshine, of fun, and it was an immense commercial success. Also in 2021, Nathalie created her second fragrance for Parfums de Marly alongside the perfumer Hamid Mirati Kashani. So this one was Oriana, and this is based around the idea of a powdery marshmallow. This fragrance again uses that famous Chantilly accord that was a patented fragrance ingredient by Firmenich that was used in Love Tuberose by Amouage. And this fragrance was a big hit. It's just truly very gourmand, very likeable, and is something that always gets compared with Kilian's Princess. In 2022, Lawson was also involved in the launch of a niche perfume brand that was trying to do something different. So Essential Parfums was formed as an idea of showcasing perfumers' work and just giving them free rein over what they want to do with their own fragrances. Lawson created the fragrance Fig Infusion for the line, and it remains one of the brand's most popular creations. So what's Lawson been up to recently? Well, she's been continuing to make fragrances for Maison Violet, and she's also created her first fragrance for Kayali. As part of the Freedom collection, she created Musky Floral Bouquet. She's also created the new Venus line from Nina Ricci in collaboration with Olivia Cresp, who she seems to work with quite a bit. And she's also worked with the brand Born to Stand Out on their fragrance Mud, which is a milky chocolatey fragrance but with a bit of a Born to Stand Out twist. So what does Nathalie see as the ingredients for a successful fragrance? Well, she says that it's newness, character, being diffusive so people get lots of compliments, and also something that's long lasting. Nathalie also quotes the author Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and she says that perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing more to take away. I think with reading about Lawson, I've come to realise that she's much quieter than a lot of other perfumers. And I saw this again with Louise Turner. I feel like the female perfumers that are out there are less celebrated than the male perfumers. I find less information about them. And I think Lawson was truly a trailblazer. When she entered the world of perfumery in the 80s, very few female perfumers were successful and out there creating fragrances. She was really one of the first big successful perfumers of the modern era. When pushed to select a fragrance that she wishes she'd created, Lawson chose two. She chose Flower by Kenzo because she liked the powdery floral aspect there. And she also chose Dior's Hypnotic Poison because she describes it as a pure sensual pleasure, a signature, a type of fragrance that she really enjoys. When I was reading about Nathalie, I came across one quote from her where she sort of gets a little bit annoyed about being called a nose. She says that she's far more than a nose. She says she's a brain too. And what she means about that, of course, is that perfumery is not only about smelling things, it's about having the know-how to create things in the first place. It's a real mix of art and academic study, and I think that's what she means when she says that being called a nose doesn't quite cover that. Lorson has created over 350 fragrances over 35 years, so I think she's really earned the title of brain as well as nose. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, then please do press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already, and let me know which is your favourite creation from Nathalie Lorson. Do you like her fragrances for Maison Violet? Are you a big fan of her more affordable lines? Do you really love her creations for Lalique? I'd be really interested to know your favourites. Perhaps it's something I've not featured in this video. Please let me know. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.